am glad that you are all here and you didn't give up on me. It took me 10 minutes to get here, so I was sitting in the wrong room. Um, First of all, thank you for the opportunity to share this information with all of you. I had the great honor of meeting Trudy, and my colleague spent quite a bit of time visiting with Trudy at the AHEAD conference just a month ago. I can't believe school's in session already, or just about to be so. And so today what I'd like to do is spend a little bit of time talking about providing communication access. Especially to the North Carolina community colleges. We want you to know what resources are available in the event you do have a deaf or hard of hearing student coming into a classroom or wanting to have a tour of the campus, or maybe possibly a new employee or a professor that wants to interview or have a position at any one of your colleges. We can be that communication link for your organizations. So to get started, I'm going to advance and share with everyone a little bit about who we are. Our company name is Deaf Services Unlimited, and over the years, we've come to known as DSU. And at the top of this slide, it does say that we are CODA owned. And being CODA owned means that the owner, myself, I actually was born to deaf parents. So both of my mom and dad, they became deaf when they were 2 years of age. So my first language was American Sign Language, and then later on I learned how to speak. Being CODA owned is something that we like to share with people because a lot of times when you are a CODA, you have actually grown up in an environment where deaf people and deaf culture was prevalent. And you also saw a lot of the miscommunications, misunderstandings about the experience in life individuals have when they are deaf. We feel that we are very deaf-centered. We have several deaf people that work here for our organization, and part of our cultural guidelines are that we are very much about doing what is in the best interest of the deaf individual. We've been around for almost 30 years. We just celebrated our 27th anniversary earlier this year, and we specialize in higher education. I always like to take just a moment to say our very first customer 27 years ago was Iowa State University when they had a dietetic student start classes and they were not able to find sign language interpreting services. So the student was 2 weeks into the classes before they were able to start providing that type of access to her. And she went on to become not only a licensed dietitian, but she's also an attorney now, practicing just really kind of, her career path really started at college and took off from there. Another aspect about Deaf Services Unlimited is that we do provide sign language interpreters and CART captionists, people that do the captioning, whether it's in a classroom or for a graduation ceremony. And we have over 1,500 individuals that work with us across the country. I am just going to remind you that if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat box because we will be responding to them. And if I catch them and they're appropriate to just slide in right at the time, if I don't, I will definitely get to them at the end of our time together. To begin with, just to kind of give you a quick overview of the services that we provide 5 distinct areas of communication or cultural access. So obviously, in our very longest standing service that we provide is on-site interpreting. And that means that it's probably what you're most familiar with. It's where you might have a classroom where there's a deaf student or a deaf professor, and the interpreter comes on site to provide the services there. We also provide video remote interpreting. And I will say that during COVID, video remote interpreting became very, very popular and in high demand. However, we were providing this service about 8 years before COVID entered the picture. And so when COVID happened, we were well equipped and ready to assist those organizations that wanted to have an alternative resource for providing access. We also provide CART captioning services, and this is provided through professional writers. It is not an auto-generated or AI component. It is actually CART captionists that are providing the service. Most of these are remote services, but there are occasions where we do go on site for this. We also provide training, deaf culture, and education consultation. A lot of times we will get asked questions on how do you make a deaf-friendly campus? What are some of the things that we can, as an institution, invite and encourage deaf students to come to our campus? We also provide training, for example, for professors who may not know what they might need to do differently now that they have a need for an accommodation in their classroom. So deaf culture education and consultation is a service that we provide. We also provide post-production interpreting and captioning. And this many times is for, like commercials, messages from the president of the institution. We've had colleges contact us and ask that we either caption and or interpret some of the materials that they have in their video libraries, classes that are actually recorded and kept for future reference. We have gone in and provided the post-production interpreting and captioning for those items. We do have a question that's come in on the chat, and I may have to look into this while we are going through this presentation. But the question is, for on-site interpreting, how many provisionally or fully licensed interpreters do you have access to in North Carolina? And so that is something we're going to check into, because I don't have that right off the top of my head, but I will get some information for you. So let's see, moving to our next slide. One of the things that I really want to emphasize is that we are an organization that's very agile. We are able to be scalable based on the needs and the demands that we experience across the country from customers like you that are looking for communication access services. We have processes that are repeatable, and we are constantly recruiting more interpreters and more captionists to maintain a robust pool of qualified applicants that work with us. Sometimes, and the way that we have grown, it's really been quite organic over the last 27 years, in that when a demand for a service came up in a certain area, we would go out and recruit individuals and collaborate with them so that we would provide the coordination and scheduling, and they would provide the on-site or video remote services that we offer. We also have a custom designed reservation process so that we can quickly process the requests that you might have. A lot of times that might mean that we have a separate page for you on our website so that just your institution has access, so that we're not asking redundant questions when we know that you are going to be providing us with the information that we need to get interpreters or captionists scheduled. We also pride ourselves in being what I would call a non-transactional coordination service. What we do is we make sure that we have the right interpreter scheduled for the assignment that comes up. Now, obviously, when you've got professional interpreters, you can imagine all of the types of settings that they might end up going into, because we interpret wherever communication takes place. So when we think about where communication takes place, it could be in a medical environment, it could be at a workplace, could be in government entities or in higher education. And then when you get into something like higher education, you may have liberal arts classes, you may have STEM classes, and chemistry, all different types of areas. And what we have found, just by human nature, that certain interpreters specialize in certain areas. So if you do have a particular subject type, we will reach out to our interpreter teams and find out and match the best suited interpreter for that type of a situation or setting. We're also very client centric. We look for a lot of times there are preferences, and it's not just a preference in terms of who do I like better. It's more of a preference of, yes, this person understands my signing style, because there are different types and versions of sign language. And if you've got more questions about that, I can answer that a little bit later. We have a very proactive project management process, and I'm going to share that process with you just shortly in terms of how we coordinate and get services deployed to you right away. This slide shares that. So if you had a particular web page that we had designed specifically for your institution, you would then make your request on that web page. We would receive that and immediately acknowledge to you that we have received that request, and we do begin working on it immediately. We review the details of the assignment, look at what the needs and preferences are. Again, preference being most suited interpreter or caption writer for that assignment. We go ahead and we schedule those services, and then we send you back a confirmation of who the interpreter or the writer will be, along with all of the assignment details. We provide the services. At the end of the month, we submit an invoice. We also can provide an evaluation and any type of reporting criteria that you would like for us to submit to you. And usually with people that work with us, we do that at the end of the month. But if there are different preferences you have, we can do it by class, we can do it by student, we can do it by campus, wide variety of ways that we can provide reporting data to you. We feel like we are extremely efficient in terms of coordinating services. We have strategic scheduling, dynamic planning, and we've got the resources. So a lot of times when we find out that we are going to be working with a particular institution, we like to know the entire range of services and what those schedules look like. Because a lot of times, rather than taking an individual assignment and sending an interpreter to that and then having them leave, but then you've got another student that has a class 45 minutes later, sending a separate student for that one, what we like to do is streamline where are all of the needs, how can we maximize the usage of interpreters when they're already on site, and there might be times you might have some online classes or sessions that get together. We can also make sure that we are maximizing the utilization of interpreters that way. We want it to be efficient for you. And so we feel like as your partner, we are looking to find, identify, and carry out the efficiencies that can happen from a scheduling standpoint. Now, dynamic planning, because we do know unexpected absences happen. Somebody gets sick, somebody's not able to make it to class, the weather. What we will do is always have a backup plan. We work with you because we see ourselves as your partner in maintaining not only continued reliable access to your students or anybody that might need communication access, but we are your partner in making sure that you are in compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act. We also work with unique and dynamic classrooms. Sometimes it might be a welding class. So we've got equipment to think about, we've got headgear to consider, or we might be looking at a hybrid approach, synchronous classes online or asynchronous classes. And also last minute emergencies. Somebody needs to go to the healthcare services for student healthcare. And so we are very flexible in being able to provide those type of services as well. Interpreting and CART services, we are your resource. We can do recruitment, development. We do, in some situations, actually develop glossaries or libraries so that any interpreter pool or team that is working with a particular student, everybody is using the same sign language reference, and so that the student isn't having to relearn, because as you can tell, American Sign Language is just like the way that we communicate. There's certain jargon, there's certain um, uh, vocabulary that we will use. And if you have a different person coming in that hasn't been a part of that class all along, we want to make sure that they are using consistent terminology in working with the student. Credentials are very important. We are a company that is not a training ground for students of the interpreting or captioning field. When you come to us, all of our interpreters usually have 3 or more years of experience after becoming nationally certified. So not only have they gone through their education, their experience, their practicum work, and then they sit for the national test to become certified. We wait an additional 3 years after that, so they have gotten more on the ground experience and developed their expertise in before they start working with us to provide services. We do look for national and local certification. We look at what every state is different. So we would look specifically in North Carolina for the credentials that are required and make sure that we are in compliance with that as well. We run background checks if that is something that is required by the institution. We do look for education and training ongoing, CEU training, and we work to make sure that every interpreter that and transcriptionist that works with us understands what our standards are, have cultural sensitivity, and maintain their certification credentials. Now, this is a screen full of text, and I don't usually have screens that are full of it, and I can definitely share this PowerPoint with you after our time together today, but I did want to lay out what the certification and standards are that we look for when we are working with interpreters. They do have to have national certification, like I mentioned, not only through the National Association for Interpreters, which is the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, but we also recognize the National Association for the Deaf certification. Only levels 4 and 5 are considered qualified to our Deaf Services Unlimited standards. Local certification and licensure are required depending on the state that they're providing services in. And they, of course, have to be very fluent in English and in American Sign Language. But I also add here the whole continuum. There are versions of sign language which are English-based. Some of them are specifically English-based. Some of them are kind of a pidgin sign language. And then most deaf people do use American Sign Language, and they are different. People that are nationally certified have the ability to do either or, and if they aren't able to transliterate in a particular area, they would not accept the assignment when that was presented to them. Like I said, we also require a minimum of 3 years experience in any of these areas, American Sign Language or one of the contrived English sign languages, oral interpreting, tactile interpreting, and then of course we have the specialty certifications such as legal specialist, advanced specialist. That's where you're going to see a lot of the STEM interpreters coming from. And more recently, we have seen an emergence of certified deaf interpreters. Now that means that the individual interpreting is deaf. We use a team of a hearing interpreter and a deaf interpreter. You probably saw a lot of that happening on the public service announcements during COVID. On TV when they were having governor announcements, many of the interpreters that were used were certified deaf interpreters. And the reason for that is there is a much more native-like, of course, level of sign language interpreting that happens when you are having that interpreter be someone who is deaf. They capture many more of the nuances that individuals who aren't native to the language really, they can learn it, but it's not a natural tendency that's brought to the table in their interpretation. And of course, we have interpreters that specialize, like I said, in many different, what would you call them, verticals of different industries: scientific, medical, information technology, things like that. A lot of times too, you will see interpreter teams, and that's usually, I mentioned it just briefly with the certified deaf interpreter, but even in regular settings, you will see two American Sign Language interpreters, both who are hearing, and they work as a team. And we take the decision to use a team on a case-by-case basis. Here are some of the reasons that we might be looking at using a team: either the length of time and or the complexity of an assignment. And I can tell you, being an interpreter by profession, not only for my parents, but I am nationally certified as an interpreter. There were some classes, for example, one of them was organic chemistry. It was a 45-minute class, but that class required us to have a team. The reason for that is, one, the complexity of the nature of the topic that was being discussed. And in addition, the professor had a very heavy accent that was very difficult for both of me and my team to be able to interpret. And so we couldn't go the full 20 to 30 minutes before we took turns. We had to limit it to like 8 to 10 minutes before we were where we had to trade off to be able to maintain the accuracy and be able to impart the complexity of the topic that was being discussed. Also, the unique needs of the person or persons being served. Sometimes you will have breakout groups in a particular class, or one student, maybe you've got two deaf students, but one of them is more American Sign Language and the other one is more English in terms of their communication needs. And so we had to split it up and develop teams. Physical and emotional dynamics of a setting, really, I don't see that as often in the academic setting, but I do see that in mental health settings, legal settings. So it really depends on the situation. And the reason that we use teams is, many years ago, OSHA came out with standards to eliminate or avoid repetitive stress syndrome or injuries for interpreters. So that is why we do use teams, in addition to the other criteria that I just explained. The other service that we provide is CART captioning, and CART captioning obviously does not have anything at all to do with sign language, but it is an accommodation, a reasonable accommodation that allows a person with particular communication needs to be able to then have equal access. So the CART writers that we rely on, and CART stands for Computer Aided Real-Time Captioning. People refer to it as CART in general, but CART captioning, we only use individuals that are nationally certified by the National Court Reporters Association. They have a specialty certification for CART captioning. They are very fluent in voice to text and are able to provide that type of an accommodation. They transcribe in a wide variety of settings. Usually with CART captionists, their preparation is a little bit different than it would be for sign language interpreters. They are actually building the glossaries in their equipment to be able to quickly and efficiently capture all of the conversation that is being said. And they're able to keep pace with multiple communications, whether it's in conferences, meetings, seminars, training classes. That's one of their criteria, and that is why CART captioning is ADA compliant, because they do have, I believe, a 97 or 98% compliance. They need to be able to keep up and be accurate for 97 to 98% of the time. A lot of the auto-generated or AI only so far, the best one that we have seen is Google Talk, I think it is, and they are at 70% accuracy. So it's important when you are looking to be ADA compliant that you are looking to be sure that you provide the correct accommodations so that it does keep your organization in compliance with the federal expectations. These CART writers also have a code of ethics, just like interpreters, and they have a minimum of that certification that is required for providing CART captioning. Oh, I feel like I'm just talking at you, so please take time to address the questions that you might have in the chat, and we will get to those as we get toward the end of the presentation. A lot of times people will say, you know, why Deaf Services Unlimited? Why should we make DSU our partner? And I will tell you, we are experts in this field. The successes that we are able to acknowledge include the fact that through the 1,500 interpreters and CART writers that we have a 98% fulfillment rate for all services, whether it's on-site captioning or VRI. But one step better with VRI, we have 100% fulfillment. We have never not filled a VRI request. And I can tell you, providing services every day in every state of the country, to me, that is an exceptional fulfillment rate to be able to share with people that are looking for a partner in providing communication access. We also internally have streamlined our process so that when a request is made to the time services are provided, even if it is a last minute request, we invite you to, you know, you don't have to wait 1 week. Of course, you're going to have better luck in getting, you know, assignments fulfilled the more time we have, because interpreters are in high demand and it's very scarce. I'm going to take a moment here from this slide to just share with you to kind of put in perspective the challenges that we will face, and I'm sure many of you in your organizations face. There's not a lot of sign language interpreters readily available on site in your local communities, and here is why. In looking at the deaf population, we are looking at about 1 million people around the country that use sign language to communicate as their primary mode of communication. That includes people like my parents who use sign language in their everyday life to communicate. So we've got 1 million people. That's who we're talking about providing communication access to. If you look at the national association that certifies interpreters, we have a total of 10,000, I think 243 interpreters that are nationally certified to fulfill the communication needs of 1 million people. Now, if you think about 1 million people, that's not just 1 million people that get, you know, 10,000 interpreters. These 1 million people have multiple communication needs throughout the day. I think of the times my parents would rely on me to communicate with them, and it would be to make some phone calls in the morning before my dad went off to work, before my mom got busy with her day. My mom ran a cake decorating business, and so when she had customers come in, I would be interpreting for that. Then there were doctor's appointments and dentist appointments and parent-teacher conferences, and then classes that my dad took at night to supplement his education regarding the career that he was working in. And then, you know, just the ins and outs of a day. A deaf individual could have multiple times where they need sign language interpreting services. Well, then when we take a look at 10,253 interpreters, 25% of those interpreters have full-time jobs elsewhere, whether it is interpreting or they became nationally certified, but they took work in different industries and really don't utilize their certification. That leaves about 7,500 interpreters. That is not a lot to accommodate 1 million people that need communication all day long. So when we are faced with that type of a situation, video remote interpreting became an excellent solution to be able to accommodate as a backup plan. And in many cases today, it is the plan. Many people are requesting services for a Zoom meeting, or they are requesting an online class where they want a sign language interpreter to be online. So as you can see, the earlier that we know what a schedule is, the quicker we can have access to those available interpreters before they get taken up by other people who need the same service. Again, here's our request process. It's 6 steps. Submit the request on our website, and it can be a specialized form that we make just for your organization. We receive the request and let you know that we've got it, we're on it. We then review the request and find and secure a qualified provider. Then we email you the confirmation. That confirmation comes to you as soon as we get those services scheduled. We let you know who the provider will be and the details of the request. Then we provide the request, and then at the end of the month, we provide an invoice to your billing department. Here's a student, Dr. Kelly Harrigan, that we have the honor of interpreting for throughout her college career. And here is what she has to say. I owe a great deal to my many wonderful professors in social work. They have taught me so much and have given me a path to follow the rest of my life. However, I owe my greatest debt to the countless number of interpreters who sat in my classrooms and allowed me to learn social welfare history, methods of social work, and even statistics. It was through their hands that I learned my most important lessons, and it was through their voices that I expressed my ideas and questions. My interpreters have provided the link for me to connect to my education. I do not believe I could have finished my degree without them. I will forever be indebted. And we were just honored to receive that. We shared that with her interpreter team that worked with her throughout her years in Alaska, and it was just very telling in terms of the critical nature of communication access. Now, this is our promise to every customer. Go ahead, expect too much is our promise to each client, consumer, and service provider who works with Deaf Services Unlimited. We take this promise very seriously. This is evidenced in our highly rated past performance evaluations from various federal and state government agencies, as well as our higher education clients. So we are always striving for go ahead, expect too much, which means you're never going to hear us say, that's not our job. You're never going to hear us say, oh, sorry, that's just not going to work, without knowing that we have overturned every stone that is available for us to find a solution for you. DSU tailors the request management process to fit each college, and we do work with a wide variety of colleges across the country. Sometimes we find that an institution wants the deaf individual to make their own request and carbon copies the student access services department. Or we've got other colleges that say, no, we want the student to bring all of the requests to our department, then we will make the request directly to Deaf Services Unlimited. We can go either way, or if you've got an alternative idea, we're definitely willing to try that out with you as well. We also prioritize the best fit approach. We are always looking to find the best provider that matches. Our database allows us to list the preferred interpreters or CART writers for a particular student or a particular subject. And we are here to resolve any type of conflict that might need to be addressed. For example, we had a situation where a deaf person had to provide a presentation. And so they did their presentations in sign language, and then the interpretation was actually voicing that for the professor to be able to understand the presentation. So lots of different ways that we can work with you. Also, in terms of consistency, we would assign an account manager as your main point of contact. While we engage our entire coordination team, there is one person that is the go-to that is assigned to your institution. That way, then we've got somebody that owns this relationship and makes sure that your needs are getting met. We also have a new product that I am really excited to share. This is called DSU Training Solutions. And what it is a module-based video education piece. It is a deaf culture training. And this training is used for faculty and staff when you are looking for ways to make a deaf-friendly campus. A lot of times people will think, oh, somebody is deaf, they've got a hearing loss, and they just equate it to where their hearing loss is, on their ears. You know, something needs to be fixed to make that person be able to receive or access their education. And we're saying, oh no, it goes much further than that. When you've got somebody that's deaf, you've got somebody that sees the world in a different way. Their language is visual. The way they communicate, the way they receive the world, the way they experience life on a day in and day out basis is different than those of us who are hearing. So what we did was we developed an 11 module, 11 different lessons on deaf culture training that we have provided in a number of ways. We've done group trainings and then provided debriefing at the end of the session. We also have organizations that just purchase a license for each one of their employees and they learn at their own pace. But it does speak to encouraging a deaf-friendly campus, which makes it a much more inclusive environment. And it really is something that deaf and hard of hearing students are looking for when they are making their choice on which college to go to. So if any of your institutions are interested in working with us, our transition planning really involves meeting with the invested people at that campus to make sure that we are understanding what your needs are. We develop a strategy and then we will tailor it to what works best at your particular institution. So it's seamless because we get all the right people in the room at the same time and work through that. If you decide to collaborate with Deaf Services Unlimited, you will be able to benefit from our proven and convenient scheduling process, error-free referral and billing system, flexible solutions for higher education, some of which I've already mentioned. We also, one of the advantages is that we maintain a large pool of interpreters and cart writers. And I would be remiss to not say we have the largest pool in the country. Deaf Services Unlimited is the only organization that provides services in all 50 states. Most of our other competitors target specific regions and specific areas. We are in all 50 states just about every single day. We also have full-time ASL experts on staff. So if there are ever any questions or consultations that we need to have, we've got people that can assist. And we just maintain a high value of service for cost-efficient pricing. Like I said in the very beginning, we are looking for ways to be efficient in the distribution of services that are provided at your campus. So in looking at your mission statement, it is very clear to see that you very much embrace a multicultural, inclusive work education environment where you are able to improve the lives and really set your students up for success. It's very clear that you are looking for that kind of an outcome. And in being a community college, in fact, cohort, serving communities and individuals, which will improve the quality of life. I really appreciate that because that too is something that, that's why we are not a transactional organization where you just go online and enter something. You are going to know the people and we are going to have a relationship with you in terms of service delivery. So with that, in comparison to, or actually in congruence with our own company culture statement at Deaf Services Unlimited, we do keep our deaf consumers at the center of all we do. We never answer with just, no, we can't do that. We will be tenacious in finding ways to get things done and looking for solutions. We feel very strongly that we are your partner and that we will be sure internally we work as a team. We use a very much a team-oriented approach. Collaboration is the buzzword around here. And through that process, we work to improve our systems and processes so that we're not reinventing the wheel. We are making sure that we leave plenty of space for more innovation and allow the systematic things to be in a system where you can come to rely and know this is what you can expect from Deaf Services Unlimited. So I'm going to open it up for questions. I do have a response for the first question that was provided. The question was for on-site interpreting, how many provisionally or fully licensed interpreters do you have access to in North Carolina? And from our database, people that have already provided services with us and through us, we have 36 licensed interpreters in North Carolina. The second question that I have is our agency, NCCCS, hosts statewide student leadership conferences for system within our system. And they are also national student organizations that host events throughout the year around the state. If a college is sending a student to the event offsite, does the college or the hosting organization have the responsibility of providing the accommodation? That is a very good question. I will tell you, based on precedents from the ADA, there is no clear cut, especially when both organizations are obligated. And I can share an example right here within our own company. We have deaf individuals that work here, and one of our deaf program managers wanted to take a class at an organization where he could learn to improve his presentation skills. Well, because he is an employee here, we are providing the sign language interpreter for that employee to go and take a class at that training facility. It's actually it's like a coaching center, and they also provide training. So we are providing the interpreting services for our staff person to go and do that, take advantage of that training. Now, it is very true that entity also is responsible for providing access. There is no clear cut. I suppose they could enter into a conversation and say, would you be willing to split it with us? But because we have already, as Deaf Services Unlimited, we have already set aside a budget for our staff person to be able to get education and training. We are going to be taking care of that responsibility. But there's nothing that says that you can't both go in and collaborate and have a conversation about that. Or if they are very accustomed to providing this type of service, then sometimes they will just take care of that. We have researched this and gone back to the ADA, and there is no precedent that says it is one or the other. They haven't really defined who is responsible. They have just said they both are. Does that answer your question or not? You bet. You bet. Any other questions? And you can even pop on and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question, if you don't want to type it all out. Maybe I can ask you a question. Just out of curiosity, I don't know what colleges each of you is representing within the community college system, but do you have a number of deaf students? How many deaf students do you currently have at your specific institution? Okay. So we've got one person, Barbara, who said you have 3 students at one particular institution. A lot of times when you have more than one deaf person, deaf student, deaf student at a school, you'll start getting like student student activity clubs, deaf student clubs. SCC currently has 1 hard of hearing, no deaf. Wilkes Community has 1, and 1 to 2 instructors, 2 at Lenore. Great. So another thing that I just want to put out there is that a lot of colleges may not need a full-fledged partner to come in and manage all of the coordination of services. A lot of times Deaf Services Unlimited will be seen as the backup plan. If you already have interpreters that you employ, or you already have a partner that you're working with, in the event somebody is absent, can't make it to class, you need to have a quick substitute to step in. We also function in that role for a number of colleges as well. We are also kind of the transition plan. Somebody will get a deaf student, we will come in, provide the interpreting services while they are interviewing interpreters to hire on campus. And then we step out once that student, or once that full-time or part-time person is hired. So that is another way that we can work in conjunction or collaboration with your organization. Oh my, 10 students, PCC deaf students, currently 2 to 3, but 2 of them do not sign. So as you can see, that there's a whole gamut of communication access needs that are unique and different, which is why we want to make sure that personal touch is added. It's not just transactional. We are going to ask the questions so that we are providing you with an appropriate accommodation that works. So, oh, I'm sorry, PCC has 5 deaf students. The operative number was missing in that last statement, so that is great. Any other questions you might have? I'm here to answer any now, or if you want to reach back out to us, I will definitely share our contact information. Trudy has been our contact, and Trudy is who we met just recently. And I believe, I remember Trudy, I think from some previous conferences that we have been at. So having that contact is wonderful to be able to get to us and ask more questions.
And Diana, I will, this is Trudy, I will stop the recording so that in case people do have questions but don't want to be recorded, we'll hold out a couple more minutes, and
Sure.
yeah, we can stop this recording, and